Sent an email to your council clerk yesterday with some photographs and some cases. I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to have those. You're going to be making your decisions today. I had a chance to look at yesterday, but the nutshell is this. In 1993, your parish adopted an ordinance that seems to mirror the East Baton Rouge Parish ordinance. And that ordinance essentially made it inadmissible to have a tiger like Tony, the one that's at the truck stop. The proposed ordinance essentially mirrors the state's new regulation. Both of them, from what I just heard from reading the state, if the tiger is legally possessed as of August 15, 2006, then it qualifies for a license. That's the grandfather clause that the state wrote in, and that's the grandfather clause that the proposed ordinance has. Now, the purpose of a grandfather clause is you're going to move from less restrictive regulation to more restrictive, and you want to give people an opportunity to get adjusted. That's reasonable for the state because they didn't have something like this before, and that's what they're doing. In this parish, you actually have a more restrictive ordinance dating back to 1993. My point is, the proposed ordinance isn't going to cut it for Tony, and if there's no other animal in the parish except for Tony that would be covered by this is a waste of time. If there's a new proposed ordinance that would somehow grandfather Tony, despite the fact that going back to his birth, I believe in 2000, he was illegally here, you would have to expressly grandfather Tony and say, Tony wasn't covered by this earlier ordinance. That's the only way that I see the state granting a permit under their regulation. This parish would have to say, we're going to backtrack and Tony's going to be grandfather. We're going to exempt him from that past ordinance. Unless you do that, then the state is open territory, judgment action or some sort of legal action saying that they are improperly giving a permit or license to Tony's owner if they look at this revised or proposed ordinance, and if you pass it and say, okay, well, then the parish is allowing it, so we're going to do it. That's not proper, and anybody in the state could challenge the state, and if they do that, then they're going to bring in the parish too, and that's going to be happening in Baton Rouge in the state court. And if that happens in court, then definitely the parish would be brought up there. So I wanted to point that out because I've worked in state government for over 6 years, and you have a right to understand this stuff because I understand that you all want to do the right thing according to what your constituents want, and you got to have the proper legal process. It's got to be in a safe, clean environment. The owner has been written up by the USDA 16 times since they've regulated this type of thing. And those have been for things like not having clean food. We've got photographs which I've emailed to you. Blood on the concrete inside. USDA took his other tigers, I think it was 3, because of these problems.
And as far as his violations, he had 1 or 2 violations over his 20-year period of maintaining his tigers. These violations were limited to maintenance issues.
Essentially saying that if Tony's taken away, he'll die because of heartbreak. Tony doesn't live with the owner. The owner, I don't think he lives at the truck stop. Tony's in a cage there. Are you going to be teaching them that a tiger should be in a little cage like this at a truck stop where it can die and will die? Hurricane, hazardous material spill, anything like that? Or do you think that the tiger should be somewhere where you can see them in a more natural environment? I'll tell you, if Tony goes anywhere else that's a better place for him to be, that's fine with us. That's our primary concern. Thank you for your time, and thank you for consideration of this very important matter.
I heard a lot of talk about he can never be legally possessed. No, he can't be legally possessed under the old ordinance. That's why we're here to amend the ordinance. If the ordinance is amended, Tony will be legally possessed. All I see is a group that wants to take Mr. Salmon's title. I've heard all this talk about let's move him to Florida. Why is their facility any better than his?
And looking at the YouTube thing that was on the internet and all that, they were saying that the tiger is in distress. And they haven't shown us any doctor where a veterinarian has determined, or animal psychologist well determined that animal is in distress. I just don't see there's no proof of abuse. They said they had 20 violations. We haven't had any hard copies, any type of paperwork violations. They have some that's posted in there, but no official summons or citation. It's just an agency write-up.
I I was in Grove State for about 45 minutes. I saw people drive up, get out their cars and walk and look at the tiger. I saw people drive up to the store, get out their car and drive and looking at tires. People just, I must have saw about 100 people or more in less than 45 minutes. I don't see no reason to move the tiger because the conditions of where he is almost perfect that I can see.
Just real briefly, and I disagree respectfully with that opinion. In 1993, when the jury passed the ordinance, Mr. Jew did some research. I understand that was the reason. Tony wasn't grandfathered in at the time. If we started with a clean slate today, it is my understanding that a tiger would not be permitted in that type of facility. I think that tiger deserves better. In all due respect to Mr. Sandlin, the past, I think he's run a pretty good operation. I know the tiger never escaped. You never say never with any of the cats around this country, around this world. But I think that particular tiger deserves better, and I will not vote to amend that ordinance. Thank you.
Now that the parish ordinance has been amended to grandfather the tiger housed at the Tiger truck stop, it is my duty as parish president to determine whether or not a permit can be issued for the tiger to ensure the safety of the general public and the welfare of the tiger must also be taken into consideration. The fact that the parish may, don't say shall, may issue a permit does not automatically ensure that the State Wildlife and Fisheries Department will issue a permit. During the past weeks, I have been in contact with veterinarians who are very knowledgeable about large cats held in captivity, and there are certain criteria that must be met to ensure the health and welfare of a tiger that is held in captivity. If the owner of the tiger is not willing to meet the standards to protect the general public and the health, and most important, the health and welfare of the tiger, then it is incumbent upon me to consider a veto of the amendment to the ordinance. Should the owner of the tiger not agree to conditions necessary to protect the general public, our first concern, and secondly, the welfare of the animal, I will submit a veto statement to you within the days provided for in the Home Rule Charter. And that day starts 10 days from today. So hopefully I will be meeting with the owners of the cat for some conditions to be met for the conditions of this tiger staying here in Nicolville Parish. If these conditions are not met for the best humane way to keep this animal with the general public number one in mind, and I agree with Councilman Reeves about don't never say never about a tiger escaping, then I will veto this ordinance. Any questions about that?
I also want to make sure that the president understands that we also have an opportunity to override the veto. So, and the only reason why I'm for this, I've seen this tiger numerous times at this place, and I mean, it's been a joy to see it. Actually, I took my grandson to see it almost 2 weeks ago. The only thing I wanted to make sure the president knew that a 2-3 vote will also override a veto.